Final roster cuts had to be made today by 3 p.m. Central Time, which means all 32 NFL teams are officially at the 53-man roster, which means we're going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings 53-man roster, get my thoughts, my 2 cents, and also like to hear from you guys before we start with the initial 53-man roster, because yes, it can change pending trades. There could be a couple people that, we're looking to pick up via the waiver wire or whatnot and stuff like that. So before we get to that, we're going to talk about all the other people that we cut today or this morning, because yesterday the Vikings did release, 14 players, which means we had a lot of work to do today. So what exactly did the Vikings do all together? Well, let's look at the waived players. First and foremost, Lewis Seen was a massive one. That was probably one of the ones that kind of surprised us, but at the same time didn't. We knew he was going to get waived. Sort of, but we also thought there was a potential possibility that he could get traded because there was, or at least there's some reports that came out that said he actually had multiple suitors, but no deal came to fruition. So we ended up waiving Lewis Seen to kind of let the teams out there in the waiver wire basically fight over him and take him. Remember, former first round overall pick, drafted 32nd overall out of the University of Georgia, was an absolute dog, if you will, in college. Okay, but then he comes to the NFL and he gets hurt, suffers that gruesome ankle injury, and really hasn't been the same since. So he was waived. Probably the most surprising, other than Lewis Seen, was that the second name you see there, Kene Wangwu, 2 year or three. He's been on the team for 3 seasons, something like that. He was our star kick returner, right? Punt returner. He's housed a couple. I thought he was going to make the team strictly due to the fact that he would be the kick returner slash punt returner, whatever you need him to do, because he has some wheels on him. But with the new kickoff style and format, things are probably a little bit different. Plus, we didn't really get to see too much of him in the preseason out of the backfield. So there really wasn't any room for him in that running back room to keep him on the roster. The only reason we would have kept him would be strictly as a special team or like a kick return, punt returner. And when you have speedy guys elsewhere on the roster, like wide receiver or corner, there's really no reason to keep Kene Wangwu. So I'm sure he's going to find a job somewhere, probably a practice squad. Maybe he's on the Vikings practice squad. That's kind of what I'm assuming is going to happen, just because pending injuries, we could call him up. Otherwise, you have cornerback Sean Wright, outside linebacker Andre Carter II, who was an undrafted free agent last season out of Army. Offensive line Henry Bird. Guard Tyrese Robinson, wide receivers Lucky Jackson, Deshaun Jones, and Thayer Thomas are all gone. We've seen a lot of Lucky Jackson throughout the preseason. Just really couldn't find a home for him in this already stacked wide receiver room. Okay, with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and Jalen Naylor as our 1, 2, and 3. Defensive lineman Jacqueline Roy is gone. Linebacker Dallas Gant is gone. And outside linebacker Bo Richter is waived. I would assume the Vikings are going to make a push for Bo Richter as to add him to the practice squad. Just from what I've seen throughout the preseason, I felt like he did a pretty decent job, but you never know what happens in these situations. And to go off the releases, tight end N'Keal Harry, already knew that was going to happen. Look, we've won in the season the last couple years with 3 tight ends. We have 4 on the current active roster. One of them was added to the PUP list, or the physically unable to perform list. That is TJ Hawkinson, but we have Johnny Munt, we have Nick Muse, and Josh Oliver in there. So N'Keal Harry really had no room there was no room on the roster for him, basically. Cornerback Duke Shelley, okay? He was a stud for the Vikings 2 years ago. People were pumped up that we re-signed him this season. He didn't make the team. He has officially been released. Now, I'm not saying these guys don't make the roster, because they could get signed to the practice squad later on, either today or tomorrow, but teams are starting to figure that out slowly but surely. So hopefully by the time that is set in stone, we will know the 16 players on the practice squad, and we will also talk about that. Running back Myles Gaskin did not make the team. This one was a shock to me. Defensive back Bobby McCain, he was flying around. He hits like a train. I mean, this dude has a high motor. But I guess, the front office seen otherwise, the coaching staff seen otherwise. He played he played with Brian Flores down in Miami for a little bit. So that's the reason why we brought him up to Minnesota, to see, how he would do in this scheme and up north. But he ultimately did not make the team. Defensive lineman James Lynch, who has seen some time with the Vikings in the regular season the past couple years, he didn't make it. Robert Tunyon also didn't make the team. Again, a stacked tight end room. You got to pick your poison with who you got, and why not pick the guys that have been there for, a couple seasons over a guy that, really hasn't played much or didn't play really at all this entire preseason. Defensive lineman Jonah Williams also did not make the team. So let's get straight to it. The 53-man roster will start with offense, then defense, and then we'll work our way to the special teams and all the other, mumbo jumbo that is on the 53-man roster. So let's start. Let's look at the offense here quick. Typical, we already knew this was going to be the case. Quarterback, Sam Darnold, Jaron Hall, Nick Mullins, okay? Set in stone. That's what it's going to be for now, unless we go take a look at one of the quarterbacks that have been released today from other teams. There's a lot out there. Maybe we make a push to see if somebody's better than Nick Mullins. Running back room is Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler and CJ Ham at the fullback position. We already knew that was going to be the case when Ty Chandler was basically slated as he ain't playing week 2 in the preseason. You knew right then and there he made the roster. I'm glad that was the case because he has a high motor. I really liked what I seen out of him a couple years ago when he was an undrafted free agent. He came in here, balled out, and he earned his spot, man. So Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, CJ Ham in that backfield. Wide receivers, Jordan Addison. We already knew that was going to be the case. Justin Jefferson, obviously. Jalen Naylor will be our 3. And then it'll go Brandon Powell, Tristan Jackson, Trent Sherfield Sr. A little bit of a spelling error. Shout out Daily Norseman. Probably should fix that, but it is what it is. So we have a pretty stacked wide receiver room. It's going to be interesting to see how Jalen Naylor performs this year. Hopefully he has a whole year of being healthy, right? He's had that injury history where you really don't get to see any of him. When you think that he's going to explode, he just doesn't. So tight ends, Johnny Munt, Nick Muse, Josh Oliver, already talked about it. TJ Hawkinson, obviously on that PUP list or the physically unable to perform list. Offensive line, Garrett Bradbury, Blake Brando, Christian Darrisaw, Dan Feeney, Ed Ingram, Michael Juergens, Brian O'Neill, David Quessenberry, Walter Rouse. The big one here would be Walter Rouse signing. He could probably see some time at the right guard spot. It all depends on how Ed Ingram performs at the beginning of the season, but this is a typical Minnesota Viking line, right? You only know a couple of them. Garrett Bradbury, Christian Darrisaw, and Brian O'Neill. You do know Ed Ingram just because that's the guy that we point our finger at quite a lot during the regular season, but not impressed offensive line-wise. Hopefully things change, and hopefully we actually come together as a unit and perform well when the season gets going because, boy, we really need a run game this season. With Aaron Jones in the backfield, we're already set up for success. Now the offensive line just has to do their work. Defensively, on the defensive line, Jonathan Bullard, Harrison Phillips, Jalen Redmond, Levi Drake Rodriguez, 7th-round pick. Boy, I'm glad he made the team. Taki Taimani and Jerry Tillery. The cool one here is Levi Drake Rodriguez has a high motor. You've seen him all throughout preseason, basically running, sprinting to the ball left and right, okay, just making plays out there. He's somebody that I think Kevin O'Connell was very high on during the draft process, so hopefully things pan out and he gives us some pretty decent reps throughout the season. Linebackers, Brian Asamoah II, Blake Cashman, Kamu Grieger-Hill, Ivan Pace Jr. makes up that room. Brian Asamoah was the guy that they were all talking could potentially be traded. That still could happen. We still have, Andrew Van Ginkel as we look at the outside linebackers, the Jonathan Grenard, Pat Jones II, Dallas Turner, Andrew Van Ginkel, Jihad Ward. So if we're looking to add offensive line help, maybe we could trade Brian Asamoah and a pick or something like that to get, not a top-tier offensive lineman, but, someone that could come in and really shore up that guard position on either side, left or right. I really don't care. It just needs to be fixed. Maybe that could be the case. Cornerbacks. Caleb Evans, Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, Dwight McGlothern. Shout out to him. McGlothern was actually an undrafted free agent. Seen a lot of good things out of him. We've seen a lot of him week 3 of the preseason making some plays. So he found his way on the 53-man roster. Again, things could change, but he's on it for now. Fabian Moreau and Byron Murphy Jr. Not a great group to start the season with. I would like to see Mekhi Blackman on there. Obviously, he's done for the season with an ACL injury. Shaq Griffin, he should be back with the hamstring injury, maybe week 1, maybe week 2. But right now, our 1, 2, and 3 is probably going to be Byron Murphy Jr., Stephon Gilmore, and then Shaq Griffin after that, and Caleb Evans. Hopefully he can pick it up throughout the year and see some time as well. And then safeties, we got Cam Bynum, Theo Jackson, Josh Metellus, obviously Harrison, the Hitman Smith, and Jay Ward. Really like that group. Safety is probably the best position group that we have defensively. Other than the 2 pass rushers, Jonathan Grenard and Dallas Turner if he turns out to be what he's supposed to, potential defensive rookie of the year candidates. So special teams, what we got working there? Pretty obvious here. Only had one kicker on the roster. That's Will Reichard. Holds the all-time point record for NCAA or in NCAA history. An absolute stud. Hopefully hopefully he doesn't have the kicking woes the Vikings have had basically their entire history. Okay, because we got to fix that. So hopefully he changes the narrative around that. The punter, Ryan Wright. Long snapper, Andrew DePaula, or Pala, however the heck you want to say his last name. I apologize if I said it wrong. He's been with the team for multiple years. He's been in the NFL for quite a long time. It's hard to find a really good long snapper, so when you do find one, probably keep him around just because it's a cheap position. And why not, right? And then physically unable to perform, talked about it, TJ Hawkinson. 2 injured reserve players are eligible to return. That means they will automatically miss the first 4 weeks, just like TJ Hawkinson. This is Gabriel Murphy and Dalton Reisner. We talked about Dalton Reisner suffering a back injury throughout the offseason, was dealing with that. It was lingering throughout the training camp and stuff like that, so we've held him back. He will be missing the first 4 weeks, and hopefully we can get him back on the field come week 5, because we need that left guard or right guard situation figured out. I'm sure the Vikings are going to be busy putting together that practice squad, putting together some trades, and getting this team to actually have the legit 53-man roster. So let me know what you guys think about this initial 53-man roster from the Minnesota Vikings down below in that comment section. Also drop a like and subscribe to the channel. It'd be much, much appreciated. Have a great rest of the night, folks, and Skol Vikes.